I'm always thinking ahead to what are we teaching our kids, the next generation? Because as one of my predecessors um, in my office as a state rep for my district, then he ended up being a state senator. His name's Kenny Yuko, great guy. He was the state rep for 8 years and he was state senator for 8 years. He, has said to me many times when we're talking about stuff is, our kids are our youth are 30% of our population, but 100% of our future. If everybody could see the session we just had where we had 2 unanimous votes and there was a couple jokes were made and we were all laughing and clapping. One of my takeaways is that so far, 2 months into being a state rep, the collegiality and the camaraderie on both sides, and has I've been impressed that it's a high level of professionalism and collegiality and camaraderie.
And welcome back to our next episode of KOLOT. This is your host, Rabbi Hillel Kaplanstein, director of the Columbus Community Kollel. And it's a great honor and privilege to bring to you our next episode in our Unity in Diversity series. Throughout this series, we've been highlighting different politicians, elected officials from both major political parties, in a sense, to try to understand each other, those who you're aligned with and those who you're not aligned with, to try to get a sense of different people, who they are, where they come from, and to try to appreciate people who maybe you don't agree with, in the spirit of Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai, people who agree to disagree. We're best of friends. And of course, that Jewish value is what we're trying to do here on KOLOT. Of course, I've said this so many times, but I just got to repeat it again. KOLOT is the Hebrew word for voices. So we try to bring many, many voices on this show. And with that, it's an honor to welcome on our show this time, Eric Synenberg. Eric, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you, Rabbi. Good to be here.
Thank you.
And you've had some amazing guests, that I went through the website or the, whatever it is, your blog or whatever you sent me. Your roster of guests has been impressive. So
thank you.
This is probably outside of my league, but I appreciate you having me and it's good to be here.
So welcome back to the Columbus Community Kollel.
Yes.
I know that I've heard from friends that you've been here. Why don't we start there?
Yes. So in 2011, I literally, it's actually a crazy story. A friend of mine from growing up, Josh Mandel, had just won at the end of 2010. He had been elected state treasurer of Ohio. Mm. So I think at the time he was only 32 maybe, and I was like 31. And at that point I had 2 of my 3 boys were born. They were, I think, 2 and then 6 months. Mm. We were living in Miami, Florida, my wife Jamie and I. And I really, more than her, I had the itch to move back to Ohio. And along with moving back to Ohio, I wanted to work in the public sector and for an elected official, and really see what it's like to be in government, working as an aide, if you will, assistant for an elected official. So Josh had just been elected, and he's a friend of mine. And although I tend to be more on the left side, and sometimes he's on the right, different parties, although I've gone back and forth. But in any event,
lots to get into that later.
Yeah, but I didn't. For me, it wasn't about that. It was, here's a friend. He's just been a remarkable accomplishment. A 32-year-old now, he's been elected to a statewide office, state treasurer of Ohio. Oh, wow. And he said, "Listen, I know you want to move back, ideally to Cleveland, but if you want to consider Columbus, mm-hmm. you can come work for me. I'll have some positions. I think you'd be good at a couple different roles." And I was in Cleveland visiting. The election's obviously the first week in November. Yeah. Always first Tuesday in November. And I was visiting Cleveland for Thanksgiving. So it was actually maybe the Tuesday night of Thanksgiving week that him and I went out for a coffee, and he proposed this situation to me, this offer. And literally the next morning, at 7 a.m. maybe, I woke my wife Jamie up and said, "Here's the deal. Josh has made me this offer to come work for him in Columbus starting in January. I really want to pursue this.
Yeah.
What do you think? And at first, you probably use some choice words. And, why do you want to upset? We're living in Florida. We're enjoying life there.
Yeah.
Why? I don't know if I want to move back to Ohio, and let alone Columbus, a city that I don't even know anybody. So I said, well, let's do this. Because we had a free day. It was the day before Thanksgiving. We had no plans. So let's get in the car, drive to Columbus, check it out. And if you are an absolute no, then I'll tell them, no, I can't do it. It's not worth moving. We're not into it. Sorry. Thank you, but no thank you.
Yeah.
And however, if we think we can see ourselves potentially moving there, then I'd like to take this opportunity. So we drive down, we're here by 10 a.m. And I think our first stop might have been right up the street to the JCC.
Oh, yeah.
See what, check it out and see where the kids would be going to school if we moved here. And within 2 minutes, we met bumped into two different people that we knew. One from growing up in Beechwood, and another is a kind of a cousin of my wife's, who she didn't even know was living here at the time.
Oh.
And they ended up showing us around for the day, and the rest is history. So Jamie felt comfortable enough knowing that those two people were here, and they said great things about Columbus and the Jewish community of Columbus. And I was here 4 years, loved it, still miss it, and this community, even just driving up Main Street back today, it's changed a lot of new developments along Main Street. Sure. But this is this very special Bexley, and the Jewish community around Bexley, I think, is a pretty unique and special place.
Yeah, it certainly is. Yeah, for sure. And just before we started this, I was texting Rabbi Benjamin Weinschneider that we're going to be doing this. He's going to try to stop by late. It's just a heads up to, please keep the smile on.
My old rabbi.
Yeah, so
we got a study group that we put together when I was living here.
Wow. Yeah, so talk about that.
Yeah, I don't know how it came together, but there was a group of a few should I name names, or is it, Daryl Binsky?
Sure.
Seth, right?
Yeah,
Seth, yeah. The two of them, and then I had a friend, Ryan Bilski, who I was working with at the time for Josh Treasurer's office. And we kind of formed this study group, and we would come here, I think, every Thursday night, 8 o'clock, after the kids were put down for the night. And it was really enjoyable. Yeah, it was good.
Okay, now let's take a step back. You grew up where?
Grew up in University Heights and Beechwood. So they're side by side suburbs. And
what was that like?
Average, Reform, Judaism, the middle class childhood. So, it was good. I had a great childhood. University Heights. Again, I grew up on the street that Josh Mandel grew up on, and there were a bunch of other kids I'm still in touch with that I grew up with on that street. And it was nice. But the Cedar Center is right up the street. I would ride my bike. They had one of those old pharmacies where you go and get baseball trading cards, candy bars, and
Tops.
Yes, Tops, whatever they were. They also had those books where you would buy stickers. I don't know your age, but when I was a kid, I might be a few years older than you. There was a thing where you get stickers and put them in, and then you try to complete like the whole sticker book of the baseball players. I remember that. But
Might be able to look that one up, but yeah.
But they had them. I'm dating myself.
Yeah.
But it was Cleveland, Columbus, same thing. Cincinnati. These are great cities to raise a family and to grow up in.
Ohio's a great state.
And my I get middle class, Jewish, although Reform, but strong Jewish identity, Jewish community, Cleveland, the Beechwood University Heights community. It was a good childhood for sure.
And was your first job in politics, or how'd you get into politics?
Great question. It's sort of a family tradition, I'd call it. Sort of, I don't want to call it the family business, but my mom's father was very involved in politics and the Republican side from the time he was in his 20s till through his 80s. And he was elected and then appointed federal judge at one point. And so growing up with him, he was sort of like a second father to me. And actually, he brought my dad in, and my dad was involved too.
Oh.
But between the two of them, it was always politics. It was, our family dinners, Friday night, it would be my dad and my grandfather talking about, it's funny thinking about it now, some of these names that I haven't thought of in 20 years.
Yeah.
They were talking about either, cases that my dad had or that my grandfather had, who were the lawyers, who were the judges. And then there was the political stuff. And so I grew up just around it. But, one thing I'll say is for me, it was always about two things. Meeting new people and sense of community and helping people. And that's what the political party, the Republican Party in Cuyahoga County, where my dad was involved, my grandfather, and where I grew up, it was never about issues. It was always just about, these are our friends, we help them, if we try to get each other elected, and try to get each other. There was more probably patronage back then, so there was a sense of people get elected, they hire people. Anyways, it was sort of old school politics, not nothing divisive like we have today.
Yeah.
Maybe there was behind the scenes. I was never exposed to it. For me, it was kind of a way of life. Saturday morning, every quarter, there'd be a party, a meeting downtown at the Slovenian Hall, and they'd be voting on who were the new members of the executive committee, the central committee, who are we going to appoint for different positions, and I would just be the little kid in the background kind of running around. But eventually I picked up on it, and I enjoyed it, liked it. And
kind of like grew on you a little bit.
Yes. And, it's stuck over the years. And then fast forward, during law school, I did some volunteering when I was in law school in Cleveland, was involved, did some stuff. And then after law school, ended up moving to New York City, and my first job post law school was working on a campaign in New York City, which was an amazing experience. So this has always been sort of my true passion, my love. I have veered away from it because it is a very tough lifestyle on the family. There's not, you don't make a lot of money doing this. So I've tried to force myself over the years to get away from it, either to try to do something else, make money, more money. I put it on the back burner and said maybe it's better to put this to come back to this later in life. But here I am in the middle of it now, and still I haven't been able to get away from it.
So tell us about some of the highlights. First of all, tell us your actual role, your title, and like some of the day-to-day stuff.
Okay.
And maybe transition to some of the highlights.
Okay, Rabbi. So as of January 6th, and today's March 4th or 5th. Today's March 5th, right?
Something like that. Okay.
Do we not on a date where we're this?
March 5th, right? Yeah.
No, I know, but I mean, because I don't know when we're going to release this.
I don't know.
Somewhere
Somewhere in
whatever. Today's March 5th. I didn't know if that's a secret, what day we're actually doing this, because when you're going to release it is different.
It depends.
Anyways, 2 months ago, roughly, was my first day in this new position as a state representative. And state representative there's 99 in Ohio. We each represent around 120,000 residents. And you have an office in Columbus. All of the work is done in Columbus, the official work. I have one staff person. It's called a legislative aide, LA. I also have one intern for the time being. I'll give him a shout out because he's a nice Jewish kid from Cleveland, and he goes to Ohio State. His name's Ethan Dobris.
Oh, nice.
So I have an intern as well, but I'm one of 99. We have the state Senate. That's the other chamber. There's 33 of them. And any law has to pass both the House and the Senate. Same in the federal system.
Sure.
But each chamber is pretty much their own separate animal. So, I have 98 colleagues now, and, we're passing any law that's going to be made in Ohio over the next 2 years, all the budget, all that comes through us. So there's a lot of moving parts.
Power of the purse?
Power of the purse. Yes. A lot of moving parts. It's been an interesting just learning, and I mean just driving in just now, I'm passing it. My whole perspective just from these 2 months is totally different now, because there's so many interconnected things that you don't even think about, that driving in just now, I like new things that, like, for example, I just passed there's a liquor store here up. It's OHLQ is their logo, Ohio Liquor Store up the street. And, a little known fact that I just came up last week is 17% of their profits go to fund Jobs Ohio, which is the state's economic development
Oh yeah, sure.
entity. And so I didn't know that 2 months ago. Now I know that. And just one little tidbit or one thing that you don't even think about, all these interconnected, the way that things are so interconnected and intersect over, the State House, that I'm learning now. It's been pretty neat. The job itself is considered part-time, but it's pretty much full-time.
Right.
I do have a law job. I'm at a law firm 2 days a week, so that I have to squeeze those hours in as well.
Oh wow.
And then when we're in session over the summer, I'll do more work for them, so that's the deal I have with them. So,
Oh, that's cool.
Some of us do other jobs, some don't. Some do this full-time. You can make it full-time, believe me.
Yeah.
But a lot of us, for financial reasons and just to give ourselves a diversity of, of work and focus, do other jobs.
Yeah, and if I just thinking about it, I imagine it also gives you a little bit of a perspective from the outside. Like sometimes if you're like just so focused on the actual state, the capital, the inside work, you hear from constituents, but it's like I would imagine it's different when you actually live it as well, right?
Yes. Two things. Having another occupation while you do this, and of course, Congress is full-time, federal Congress. So I know you've had two congressmen on this show recently. They're full-time, but they're commuting back and forth to DC. That really has to be full-time.
Sure.
For us, it's easier. It's 2 hour commute. No matter where you live, pretty much 2.5 hour commute here. We're in 2 days, and then we're back home. So, it's nice to get away from this for a couple of days. So when I go to my law firm job on Mondays and Fridays, that's what I'm doing now.
Mm-hmm.
I put this aside, I forget about it, and I focus on whatever's at hand that day at the law firm.
Wow.
And it is nice to be able to turn this off, focus on that, and not be so consumed by the State House. And the other thing about it is, right, depending on your job, absolutely, you get a different perspective. In my case, the law job I previously had, I couldn't continue to do once I got elected, because it's a conflict of interest, because I would go work for the state, actually. You can't do that.
Sure.
So now I'm doing a totally different area of law, workers' compensation law. And that's relevant because it's all regulated. It's a very regulated state run system, the workers' compensation system in Ohio. Mm-hmm. And so, I'm learning that now. And just today I had a conversation with a colleague of mine who was like, "Hey, you're doing workers' comp. What do this system, is there anything we should be doing to change it?"
So there's still overlap.
There's tons of overlap, but it is good to have that different perspective. And the one thing that there's a good diversity of professions represented at the State House. So we have former union labor leaders, we have doctors, we have nurses, lawyers, accountants, school teachers.
Oh, wow.
Go down the list, and that's really important to have that diversity, because everybody's background obviously gives them different life experiences.
Absolutely.
And we're making laws, and we're doing regulating, and we're again passing the budget for all these different agencies that touch on each one of those different things. So you need to have that diversity. It's good that we have that.
As you're saying that, I can't help but think you have to figure out like how to deal with all that diversity, but you also you have constituents. You represent you said about 120,000 people. So I always wonder, and this applies for every public office, but the good of the broader society versus your own constituents who elected you. How do you balance the two? Maybe there's something that people outside constituents want, but that's not what necessarily you got elected for. So how do you balance that?
Right. Well, that's interesting, because I had been on city council prior to this for the city of Beechwood, 14,000 residents, kind of like a Bexley type suburb.
Yeah.
In Cleveland, well run, nice suburb, again, just like here in Bexley. And there we represent, we're all at large, so we represent the whole city. There's none of this district, and you only represent your district versus the whole subset. Or again, now I only represent 1 out of 99, 1/99th of the state. But then when I'm voting and making laws, there's a balance between what's best for the state as a whole versus what do my constituents want. And so that is an interesting thing that is sort of in the back of your mind as you're doing work, as you're making votes. There's actually there's three. I mean, in theory, you have the rights to do whatever, to vote how you want as an individual.
Yeah.
As an individual, but you try to balance it with what you think, based on what you know about your district, or the phone calls or emails or text messages from constituents you've gotten on a certain issue. Where you think your district is, but obviously you also want to balance what the state as a whole is best for the state. So there's always that balance between yourself, your constituents, and the state as a whole.
So I'm curious. I want your opinion on something. You see this, somewhat so often. More, I mean, I hear it more in the federal. Maybe it happens with the state, as well. But I definitely hear it more in the federal, where you have like a bill that needs to be passed, and it's a pretty thin margin, and like you could have one guy or a person, whatever it is, that could spoil it, and they may claim, whether they mean it in good faith or not, but like, this is what my constituents hired me to do. What are your thoughts on that? For the broader, public country, this is better, but you work for the people that hired you, and the people who hired you are the ones who vote for you. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I haven't been involved in any of these real tight votes yet where there's been some. I mean, matter of fact, we may. I don't know. I'm saying this kind of tongue in cheek and facetiously. We may be at an all-time high right now in terms of bipartisanship in the Ohio House.
Is that right?
This is breaking news. Maybe I might be the first one that publicly mentioned this.
Oh,
we literally are on a 3-vote streak right now. That is where it's been unanimous.
Wow.
So now the votes, the two today that we had were not that controversial. One was making November 5th Roy Rogers Day. Roy Rogers was an Ohioan actor, singer.
Okay.
Take it what you. Anyways, look him up later. So we made to November 5th Roy Rogers Day. Very non-controversial, but still, oftentimes you'll get one person who, for whatever reason, will vote no. That was a unanimous vote. The other one, this is an interesting issue because this comes up all the time. What I'll call like a cleanup bill. There are 9 different areas of law, or 9 different fees, I guess, where if you're 65 or over in Ohio, you get a discount. For some unknown reason, I'm sure it was a mistake, up until today, for one of those areas, it was actually 66 instead of 665, and that was hunting and fishing licenses.
Oh, wow.
So some of my colleagues noticed it and said we should make it all uniform, and we should drop from 66 to 65, the year by which you can get this discount. So we did that today, voted on it. That was unanimous. Nice. And the third one, going back to last week, was the transportation budget. So to fund all of the roads and bridges, construction of those for the next 2 years, which is actually about $12 billion for the whole state. Yes. Wow. Yeah. Big money. And that passed 97-0. So we're on a 3-vote streak right now that's been unanimous, all 3.
Do you think that like kind of builds momentum for more bipartisanship? Or it's issue?
You want a cynical issue for
go for it.
Yeah. It's good. It was a good sign. And but ultimately at the end of the day, we're going to there will be issues that are going to come up where people are going to go their separate ways as far as along party lines oftentimes.
So the short answer is no, really.
No, but it's a sign, I think. I think it's something that, I don't know. I don't even know if this will get any media attention or press. And I'm saying this facetiously. Is this a new record? 3 votes in a row, unanimous? I don't know. Yeah. But I mean, from what you think and you hear, I think it's good, because if the average resident, the average citizen of Ohio heard that, they'd probably be like, "That's great." Everybody agreed.
Same thing.
Obviously, the Roy Rogers thing is pretty simple.
Yeah.
But the transportation budget was a big one. This other one was sort of a cleanup. That, regardless, 3 in a row, unanimous is pretty good.
Stat.
And so good stat. So I think that's something that could build momentum a little bit. Again, so far I've been very impressed and pleasantly surprised that people in the State House people get along. Civility is good. Camaraderie between staff and the members, regardless of party affiliation. I've been very impressed.
That's nice to hear.
I'm sure we'll have our moments.
Yeah.
But
Inevitable.
But I've been very, everybody's been nice to me. I have nothing that's come up so far in the 2 months I've been there that's given me any pause, or any member I've had zero issues. Everybody's been nice. We see each other in the halls. We say hi.
Oh yeah.
It's very collegial, very nice. Yes.
Very cool.
I've been very impressed by that. And it's been better in that regard than I would have anticipated, honestly.
Do you think there's like someone who lead by example that you can maybe attribute that sense of unity and camaraderie to?
Someone in the legislature, or just in general?
Yeah, or in general, Ohio politics. A trendsetter. I don't know.
Well, one of your former guests, Governor DeWine.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think he may be part of that. He's a very unique a politician and elected official in the way that he tries to really, I think, weigh Ohio as a whole.
Yeah.
And he knows the state so well because he's been serving for so long and traveled the state so many times. And just being a Clevelander, I know he's been Cleveland who knows how many times, but he's also obviously from Southeast. He knows the state so well. So, and he's so accessible too.
He certainly is.
So when he makes a decision, and he says, "This is where I think Ohio is."
It's not Mike DeWine, it's Ohio.
I give him the benefit of the doubt that this is where he really thinks Ohio is on an issue.
Yeah.
So he's been great. We'll see what happens in the future.
I didn't necessarily prepare this, but I can't help but go there. But like Ohio's been, trending more to the right, and I don't mean this in a negative sense, but like people, I'm gonna regret saying this, but they think of it as like a rhino, you know what I mean? And where do you see Ohio going? Because it's definitely getting redder, and and then when you mention bills that are unanimously passed, like that's refreshing and not polarizing. But the state, I don't know, maybe it's like more on a federal level. I don't know. Like where do you see Ohio going?
Well, I mean, DeWine's been an elected official now. He's
Yeah, he just turned 76. I only know that they wish him had a birthday a month ago. So,
okay. So he's been in, I think, was he out for a couple of years? He might have been after he lost.
We went back to teaching,
a few years. But I mean, other than those few years, I think he's been in the office continually,
decades.
For so I think 40 out of the last 44 years, probably, or something like that. So anybody who's calling him a rhino is probably someone who wasn't even born when he started.
Yeah. It's
so
sad.
I think people need to
Chill.
check their labels at the door a little bit. For someone as experienced as as accomplished a career as he's had
And measured.
I don't think anybody should be casting a labels, that or have a bad intent on him.
No, not at all. But I'm talking.
But yeah, in general, I mean, our state is definitely, the numbers prove it. The statewide officials, obviously. I mean, we only have one Supreme Court justice left, who's a Democrat. Sherrod Brown Moss. So now we have no senators, and the statewide from governor on down are all Republicans. So it is what it is. It's been that way now, kind of it's been that way a good while. I no matter what party anybody is a member of, I think balance is always best.
Yeah.
And that pendulum is always swinging, and it's healthy and right and proper for it to swing back and forth.
It's democracy.
Correct. So, I mean, I think ideally, just being objective, only true ideologues of either party would disagree with what I'm about to say. But I think what's best for Ohio, I think Ohio's best when we have one Democrat and one Republican senator. Because the president ultimately swings back and forth. The pendulum of the president and the Senate usually swings back. And so I just don't, again, objectively, I don't see how you could argue unless you're,
You're a purist.
pure ideal on either side. That's best.
I think you could even make the argument that's like in of itself like a new creation of checks and balances. Not just the oversight from one branch or government to the other, but like having the diversity kind of like also keeps things contained. One of my friends here, Brad Caston, said that he joked politics was better when it was nerdy, and in a certain sense, what he was getting at was like, it used to also be on the 40-yard line. So it would go from 40-yard line here, 40-yard line there, and now I go on to say the 20. Maybe it's like the red zone, deeper.
Right.
Yes, and it still swings. Just when it swings further. And now that Ohio is what it is, it actually leads me to my next question, submitted by our friend David Heller. Shout out to David, a previous guest on the show as well.
Yes.
And
Did he come down for this?
no, we did it virtually actually, but most of our interviews recently have been in person. But because we started this during COVID actually.
Okay.
And it was
Okay.
yeah, that was like the impetus of the whole thing. We'll save that for another time. But
Yeah.
so yeah, David was curious, given the dynamics and I guess, if you will, the cards on the table, like, how do you get things done?
Well, again, it's only been 2 months, so I'm learning my way. But and most colleagues, a lot of the stuff that we do is maybe it's not as simple as the example I gave where the one hunting license was 66 and it needed to be 65. And then, but a lot of it's just cleaning up little things. Mm-hmm. And that's where you can definitely find bipartisan agreement on that. And so that there's definitely room to do bipartisan work. And, I have a few of those that I'm working on with some of my colleagues. Mm-hmm. One of them I've gotten not super into, and people already think I'm like an RFK.
Go for it.
The RFK Jr. Health, but
Maha.
But yes, but there is some truth in some of the things he's proposing. I'm not going to the vaccines aside, but for example, the big one is
autism.
Well, food dyes.
Okay.
Those are
pesticides, right? Isn't that the?
Well, I think that's a separate issue. But so there is a Republican that's working on a bill to ban all these bad food dyes in Ohio. Mm-hmm. Not immediately, but in a few years, you have a wait period so that the food companies can have time to comply.
Correct. It doesn't shock and wave, and it gives them more time to like understand the issue too,
and adapt.
My take on RFK, and he's got some pretty interesting takes on certain things. We'll leave it at that. But I come from a school of thought where, like, even if you don't agree with someone, you want them at the table to hear their thoughts, and you don't have to listen to everything they say. Like, I remember there was a great debate with RFK Jr. and Alan Dershowitz. It was when the COVID vaccine came out, we mandated the COVID vaccine from a constitutional standpoint. And, Alan Dershowitz was given his legal background, and RFK given his vaccine interests. And I thought it was a fascinating debate. Really, it was substance-filled, no name-calling or any of that. And RFK Jr., I think he quoted studies that, like, I thought maybe the public should just be more aware of. I'm not saying conclude the way he concludes.
Right.
But, like, I think he used the term in one of his Senate hearings, like, I want radical transparency. What are your thoughts on all that?
No, I think the more education, the more background you have on any issue is better. That's why, again, a lot of this is new to me because I'm learning it in the past 2 months. I knew about some of this stuff, but now I'm actually living it. So lobbyists get a bad connotation. Yeah. And again, the two best pieces of news I'll give you and the viewers of this podcast are the one I already shared, which is that everybody that I've met from a staff standpoint and elected actual senators and representatives at the State House in Columbus has been nice to me. I've had no weird moments or issues. It's a collegial, cordial place. That's one. And two is the lobbyists that I've met. None of them have given me any pause yet. They all seem sincere. They want to, yes, they represent their clients, but they also, most of them will say to us, listen, you don't have to always agree with us, but we're going to give you the best information we can.
Great.
And so
That's fair.
I think absolutely that, again, the more studies, the more information you have, it helps you as a, you make what you think will be the best vote, or as you draft laws, consider things. There's already been things I'm working on where something was added, but then we found some information out, and based on talking to one of the interest groups, and it was like, okay, we're going to take this out. It's not, we don't want to change the law based on this. Yeah. So, the whole sausage making, law making process, if you will, that I'm now learning intricately, because city council, we don't really have complicated, complex legislation like we have. When you have the state house, or in Washington, it's even more complex. Yeah. So you really do see here the give and take, and taking things out, and so it says this, whether it's a colleague or a lobbyist. So we're going to take this section out because it would mean this, and there could be an unintended consequence. So it's been fascinating to kind of learn that.
I want to jump to a new one, or not so new. I mean, new that you've been working on, and this came up in our previous conversation preparing for this, and that is defining anti-Semitism. So I want to turn it over to you. Get started.
Yes. So there is it's IRA, which you may have to help me out. Is that the International Holocaust? Remember? Do you know what IRA is?
No.
Okay. I think it stands for International Holocaust Remembrance Association. It's an international organization. They've come up with a definition of what anti-Semitism is, and they give examples of it. Mm-hmm. And Governor DeWine, to his credit, after October 7th, did put out an executive order using that definition, saying this is anti-Semitism, and and I don't know the exact language, but we don't stand for this in Ohio, basically. But it's not law yet; it's just an executive order. So
Sure.
There's been a movement since last General Assembly. Every 2 years is considered its own General Assembly. Mm-hmm. So that was the 135th, and now we're in the 136th General Assembly. Mm-hmm. So they and if you don't pass something by the end of the General Assembly, everything starts all over. So they didn't pass it last time, which was to actually in the Ohio Revised Code statutorily define what anti-Semitism is using these examples. So that now has been brought up again. I think the Senate, I don't know if the Senate's what they've done yet with it. They passed it yet this time or not. And in the House, it's been proposed. It hasn't had a hearing yet, but it's something that we're working on, and I think it'll probably end up passing. But my point when we were talking earlier this week, preparing for today, I told you, Rabbi, that, and this is off a conversation I had with, again, a constituent reached out to me. He's a rabbi in Cleveland. We had a wide-ranging conversation about a bunch of different things. But I asked him about this, and his main point was, we can define it however we want to define it. We play over this, and we outlaw hate speech and First Amendment. We have all these issues that come up. But his point was, and this is something that I would like to focus on, is the education component, so that people do not continue to practice, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, racism, go down the list.
Yeah.
Hate, whatever you want to call it, not being nice. I wear this bracelet every day. Mm-hmm. That a gentleman, Stuart Musinski, he may be a good guest for you, by the way, at a future date. An Orthodox, nice gentleman from Cleveland, started this nonprofit called, it's had a bunch of different names and iterations, but it's morphed into, and it's a play on land, Cleveland, kind land. So I wear this bracelet every day, and my Congresswoman, Chantel Brown, also wears it every day because I've seen it on her. And I said, that's great. And I even joked to her, I said, you probably, you should get a bunch of those and give them out to your colleagues in DC. Mm. And my joke was, you have to put them up your whole arm because there's so many colleagues and some of them aren't so nice and decent anyways. Yeah. But so this just be kind. So, in any event, I think the education part is almost more as important or more important than this definition bar. And I don't think we have mandated education and training of our students in the state of Ohio on this issue of hate, racism, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia. whatever you want, all the isms.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is just be kind, educating people on why they need to treat people properly, not treat people differently because they're from a different group or they look a certain way or pray a certain way or whatever the case may be. And that's something that I think I'm going to want to focus on more than this definition. Not to say that it's not important that we define it, but it's also, let's make it so that, in the future, we don't have to worry about defining it because there's not, and I'm being a little probably too optimistic and thinking that eventually we'll get to a point where there are none. There isn't. I mean,
do your best to put out of business.
Let's do our best to limit and put out of business.
Yeah.
Anti-Semitism, hate, racism.
It's around how much.
So I think the education part's big, and that's my point. We need to, define it, but also education and bridge building and etc.
Okay, so I want to go deeper, piece by piece, the definition and the education. But we're at KOLOT, so I got to start with education, right? What does that look like, education? And what I mean by that more specifically is like we have the Jewish character, Jewish idea of midos, like good character traits. So what does that mean? Like teaching people the importance of midos, like of how to treat people. Is that it is? And hopefully it will manifest itself in these areas. What does the educational part look like specifically?
Well, there's a couple different paths here. You could do like Kindland, this nonprofit. They go into schools and they do a whole program and they do teach about being kind to each other and what that means. Mm-hmm. The Anti-Defamation League has this CDL, right? No place for hate. They do a whole teaching. So there's that, and there's also, but I also think just the history of all of the different, situations throughout history, obviously, yes, including the Holocaust, where there have been groups that have been persecuted because of who they are, racially, religiously. So, and just being honest about it and teaching that this has happened in the past and here's what years it happened and years it. And when there's video, when there's video documentation of it, you show it.
And kind of this is what it leads to type thing. So let's be more preventative. I mean, where are you going with it?
Well, I think just show, I would hope that if people see video or photos of, let's say, the segregation we had in this country in the South and go from years ago up through the really 1960s.
Yeah.
And, and we still have that. We still have video of police hosing people down and all those horrible things. Yeah. And then, of course, for us, you can include there's video, but certainly tons of photographic evidence we have from the Holocaust.
Oh, yeah. Funny.
And so I would hope just showing that. And, there's other groups that have had their own similar, I'm not going to rank what's worse. All of us.
That's not our
yeah. But other groups have been persecuted too. So bringing as much as there's been, and there's still in the world today, of course, we have in Africa, there's genocide and so countries in Africa. So I think it's just bringing that up and showing
awareness.
Yeah.
That's a big thing. What awareness is so key to, I was reading, there's this, I was listening to something about, this is totally different topic, but it just brings out this idea of awareness with weight loss. So people think there's a myth that you should not weigh yourself daily because it should be weekly. And actually the research is the reverse. Weighing yourself daily just keeps you more aware.
Accountability too.
Yeah. Yeah. And even if you go up a little bit in the day, it could be a flu, it could be drink more water, whatever. Right. So it's the awareness. I was I totally appreciate where that's coming from. But my question,
but again, I'm not an educator, so I think it will ultimately, there should be a commission, a group that studies this maybe, or I don't know. There's always, I'm not the biggest fan of studying something and then you get a report and you study again and then it takes 10 years. To me, this is this should start next school year. Let's start it now.
Today, tomorrow, let's go. Yeah.
But I'm sure we have to do some kind of commission or stuff. But I'll defer to educators about what is the best way. But I think it's a combination of, what ADL does, what this Kindland group does, and also showing, or even, anybody who goes to the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C., and I haven't been. I should maybe not admit this, but I need to get there. I believe there's is it Cincinnati? There's a slavery underground railroad museum. Anybody who sees that, we need more people to see that and to get exposed to that, because yes, again, there might be some people that are not impacted by that emotionally and still are ignorant and do things or say or do anti-Semitic or racist things. But I think the more exposure, the less of that we'll have.
All right, so let me throw a couple more challenges at that. Let's see how deep we guys get in the weeds of it all. But like, where do communities, especially faith-based communities and parents, I mean, I would imagine that it's going to be collaborative. Even with our own children, like, there are certain things we want the teachers to do. There's certain things that we want us parents to do. And really sometimes it's just like us parents and teachers being on the same page. So that's like more on an individual level, but like something as important as this, which is, more broad, maybe even more global. Let's just put it more macro. Is there an opportunity to like make this a collaborative effort with parents, teachers, community members, laymen, leaders? I mean, can't it be something as like simple as that? Like, there shouldn't be a whole lot of disagreements. Can that be like more, it could be championed more by more people?
Yeah, I would hope that there would be no resistance to some kind of mandatory training in this, in the schools.
I'm talking about involvement.
Okay.
Is there a way to get parents involved, community members, let's say rabbis or other faith? Like, can't it be something that like everyone can do, not just regulate to the schools?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody has a responsibility to themselves, to their friends, neighbors, and to certainly parents with their own kids to teach basic ethics and morals and how we treat other people, and we don't treat people differently. I mean, I think that's yes.
That's kind of true.
I don't know that we shouldn't need a movement to make that happen. That should be what's already happening.
Yeah.
I don't.
And believe me, it's 100 times more complicated now. Technology. That's a tough one, right?
Yes. Well, yeah. The problem is that technology is how people get information that's oftentimes not true.
Right.
That lends itself sometimes to these stereotypes.
And then one click in your feed, the algorithm just feeds you more. Yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah. Yes.
I think that's got to be part of it, though. Like,
well, and this is a whole nother can of worms, which is technology, and has it gone too far? And do we, I'm on my phone too much. I hate it. I mean, at the end of the day, almost every day, I'm like, here another day went by that I was on this too much.
Yeah.
Too much browsing.
Yeah.
Now, some of it's good. If I need a quick answer to a question, I'm going to Google it, and it's right there, and that's great.
Sure.
But some of the browsing, and I won't name names of apps. We all know who they are.
Yeah.
Some of them is a waste of time, and the algorithms are there, and it makes you. Because I did listen to one of your past interviews with Congressman Landsman.
Yeah.
And I think he made the
Get off Twitter.
and it's true. I will go on Twitter. Again, my colleagues in 2 months, I haven't had one issue. But I'll go on Twitter sometimes and see what some of them are posting, and I'll want to start replying and be like, "You're wrong. How could you say this? How could you think this?"
It's like,
but what do I?
Sounds like gaslighting. What did you say?
I think that there is an intentional. Again, I wasn't going to name particular apps, but now I am. At least for me, on Twitter X, I think that it's meant to make you
By design.
mad or angry or emotional or argumentative. I don't know.
Yeah.
One of the best things I've heard, and it's so true, is like nobody's ever won a fight on, an argument on Facebook. Let's be honest. You're not going to change anybody's mind.
Oh, interesting.
I mean, people that are already on these are they're pretty set in their weight.
Yeah.
I mean,
Twitter wars are for X.
you're not going to win one of them. I mean, there's no way it's going to continue to infinity. Nobody's going to say, "Oh, you're right. I'm sorry." You don't ever see that or hear about that. It's meant to just, it's meant to cause, I think, dissent and argument.
Yeah.
Wrong.
So,
Anyways,
now let's get to the other part of it, the definition. I mean, what comes to mind when try to put it into a sentence.
Well, the definition has examples.
Yeah.
And admittedly, this is something I need to learn up on and read up on. But it does have certain examples, and that's a whole, the definition of anti-Semitism, it does contain some examples. And so I need to read up on it, to be completely candid. I'll do a plug for our now 6-person Jewish caucus in the Ohio House.
So I know Danny.
Yes. So, historically,
the great guys,
there were one, maybe two, I think. I mean, I don't know total history going way back, but at least since I've been paying attention to Ohio politics for the last 30 years, there's always been at least one or two, but I don't think, certainly not more than 3 or 4 ever at a single time, Jewish members out of the 132 legislative members of the House and Senate. And we went from only 1 2 terms ago to 2 and then 3 last term. And now we're at 6. So we've actually formed this Ohio Jewish Caucus, the 6. We're all, actually, one of us is a senator and the other 5 are representatives.
Yeah.
So it's myself, Casey Weinstein in the Senate, Dunny Isaacson, and the rest of these are House members. Dunny Isaacson, Karen Brownlee, myself, Christine Cockley, and Burl Brown Pickle Antonio.
You said that very well.
So we're the 6. I hope I didn't leave anybody out. And so what we are doing, a few things. They started, this will be the 3rd annual Passover. I'm inviting you.
Oh, thank you.
Right now.
Oh, appreciate that.
We're having a Seder at the State House.
When is that?
It's going to be, this is not an open, we're limited by numbers. So
All right, you'll text me the
here,
details later.
if anybody wants to know if we still have space, they can call me or text me. Try to get my cell phone now?
Oh, it's up to you.
Okay. At my cell phone number, it's 216-401-0074. So if anybody hears this before April 7th and they want to be a part of the Seder and we still have room for you, call or text me. I'll let you know if we have room. It's going to be at the State House. I'm not sure what level of kosher, of kashrut it's going to be. I don't know if it'll be enough for you. But worst case scenario, you can have some wine there and you'll just eat when you get home later. It is obviously before Pesach. It's the week before. Because people that week are going to be with family.
And who's running that?
So the Jewish, we're putting on
your cause.
So the 6 of us are all putting it on. It's going to be catered. Again, this will be the 3rd one. I have not been to the first 2. This will be my first one, but we're putting it on and we're going to invite community members from across the state of Ohio, and also Jewish community members and leaders from across the state of Ohio, as well as members of the House and the Senate leadership, other leaders. So it'll be a pretty broad-based group. So for some people, it'll be their first Seder. For others, it'll be our 90th. And, well, your age by 2, right? Whatever your age, 80th and 90th, whatever. Anyways, and it'll be, it'll hopefully be a really nice way to get Jewish community leaders together, as well as, teaching those that have never been to a Seder before what it's all about. And, you have a great story with the Exodus and freedom.
Yeah, appreciate it. Yeah.
So, what I was getting at is the caucus is going to start, and our first one will be in Columbus. Again, not sure when this will air, but we're going to do one in Columbus.
Well, now I have to do it before April 7th. But yeah, okay, there's a pressure now. But
yeah. We're having a roundtable probably before this will air. I won't give that date.
Okay.
The Columbus one, because it might be after this. But then at some point over the summer, we're going to do one in Cincinnati, one in Cleveland. So we're going to do these community roundtables. No charge. It's not a fundraiser. We just want people to come meet the caucus, understand there is a Jewish caucus, and we're going to have an agenda of all of our issues. And this will be one of them. So I'm sure this will be flushed out and discussed in more detail in terms of the definition of anti-Semitism. Well, should it be law? Should it not? What should it be? So
this is that conversation.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. A couple more things. 2 more things, actually. Okay. So you started at the beginning, and I made a note. Oh, good. Make sure to bring this up before the episode ends. That you yourself have kind of gone back and forth, parties, but I guess an appreciation for each one. Maybe have your own issues, if you will, with each one. Can you walk us through, I guess, if I could say, your own personal journey on that?
Yes. So I grew up in this household that was Republican, but it was what I would call the old school, 1980s Republicanism. And even within that, you had my grandfather, who I mentioned was one of my mentors, and my mom's dad involved. He was a judge. And he brought my dad sort of along. He married into the family and he got involved. And my dad was like a 1960s and 70s hippie, criminal defense lawyer who really by definition should have been a member of the Democratic Party and was a liberal. But because of the family connection, he became Republican. He was able to do it and get and be okay with it, I think, because of that it was a different party that, Voinovich comes to mind because he was a Cleveland guy that was throughout his career was friendly with my dad and my grandfather. And, he was a Cleveland legend and eventually an Ohio legend. And so, but it was that older style of republicanism. So I was, and I mean, frankly, I once 2004, 2005 came around and I was starting to develop my own identity. I had some disagreements with the way the Iraq War was handled and President Bush. And so I was able to be comfortable being a Democrat, but I was never like, just my temperament and the way I was raised, I was more of a moderate. So I'm never going to be, I'll always be pretty moderate because, back to what you said about the RFK thing, you listen to arguments on both sides.
Yeah.
I'm very, it's not that I'm influenced easily, but I give credit to all sides of all arguments. So, there's I don't think there's any one right answer anytime these political, discussions or arguments. Some of both parties have good, neither party has, all the answers and all the solutions.
Yeah.
So,
And you worked for Josh Mandel, so.
yes. Well, that was, a couple of things. Again, that was opportunity to move back to Ohio. Lifelong friend of mine.
Right. Career open doors, I'm sure.
Yeah. And, we don't always agree on every issue, but that's fine. We can agree to disagree.
Yeah.
But it was, and also, he was also not although technically an elected office, state treasurer was not really a political office.
Oh,
I mean, we're running, we're processing checks for the state.
Got it.
But, and not to get too into this, but a lot of the stuff that Josh did was actually totally nonpartisan and actually bipartisan and stuff that Democrats at the time even were celebrating, like his Ohio checkbook initiative, which was showing the transparency of how the state's still online today, still the main way that anybody who wants now to know about how any state money or the entities have joined the checkbook to see how that money is being spent. It's Ohio checkbook. It's a different iteration now.
I didn't know that was his.
Oh yeah, he started that. That was 100% him, and that's both sides. The media and interest groups on both sides of the political spectrum have lauded that as an amazing accomplishment. That was all him. And the other thing he did, here I am, like being Josh's spokesperson here. The ABLE accounts, which are 529 style accounts for people with developmental disabilities, so that they can grow those and use that to spend for care and education tax-free. And that was something that we helped start, and we ran that for Ohio and I think other states. I don't remember full chronology, but he was a leader in that. So, not that I need to again, like I'm acting like I'm Josh's spokesman here, but a lot of what he, so it was a very bipartisan, nonpartisan.
That's great.
Again, one could argue that was are some of the priorities and the things that happened in that office when he was in office, and the Ohio treasurer from 2011 to 2018 were actually, liberal.
Yeah.
So obviously, his political views when he ran for other offices like the Senate tended to be more conservative, but the office itself was never partisan. And so
You wouldn't have thought that.
yeah, well, that's I don't know. Credit to him that he was able to separate the two, I would say.
Yeah.
And run that office professionally and non-politically, and really, implementing things that were nonpartisan, bipartisan, programs that were, again, great programs for the people of Ohio.
Yeah.
So,
Credit to
there's, you can, and to anybody in this, you're always wearing two hats, I would say, when you're in public office or run in an elected office, and you are eventually running for that office. You're going to be a member of one of the two parties, and you kind of have to put that out there. But the rest of the time, if you do it the right way, you are governing when you're actually doing the governing part, and nonpartisan.
Yeah, you're an American, not a Democrat or Republican.
Yes.
Okay. Am I?
Unfortunately, I think, not to get too into it, but those lines have been totally smeared, and now it's all, not to.
Well,
yeah.
What a segue to my last question. I'm sure you had what to watch last night. Yeah.
Had what?
You had what to watch last night.
I saw some of the State of the Union. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I didn't see the whole thing, and I've been. One good thing about this job is we are so busy when we're in session, and when we have committee like today, Judiciary Committee. So I haven't been on Twitter really. So I've heard different things about it, and the reaction of the Democrats versus standing ovations and not standing, and so I've heard bits and pieces, but I really don't.
you're not caught up.
I'm not totally caught up.
Yeah, and well, just quickly, I mean, to see people just make such disruption, and eventually they had to escort someone, was just, that's a good look.
No, well, stuff like that is so. It really is. I'm always thinking ahead to what are we teaching our kids, the next generation, because as one of my predecessors, in my office as a state rep for my district, then he ended up being a state senator. His name's Kenny Yuko. Great guy. He was a state rep for 8 years and he was state senator for 8 years. He, has said to me many times when we're talking about stuff is, our kids are, our youth are, 30% of our population, but 100% of our future. It's a good one, right?
That's a good.
So, and that's true. So we can't be leaving them with this, it is very frustrating when I see people being uncivil and in the political arena. It's frustrating because for someone like me who's putting a lot of time and effort into trying to be civil and trying to hopefully eventually teach young people how they should act, stuff like that just sets the rest, and it's always the minority. The majority aren't. It's the minority, and they, that one or two, those one or two peoples can ruin it for the rest. Again, if everybody could see the session we just had where we had 2 unanimous votes and there was a couple jokes were made and we were all laughing and clapping, it doesn't have to be that way. Now, I know it won't always be like that, but again, one of my takeaways is that so far, 2 months into being a state rep, the collegiality and the camaraderie on both sides, and has I've been impressed that it's high level of professionalism and collegiality and camaraderie.
That's great. Wow. Well, I appreciate it.
I may come back in a year and who knows, but hopefully I'll still be able to say that.
Well, keep it going. That's all I could say. I appreciate that. What a way to finish. What a sentiment. And we appreciate you coming out here.
Thank you very much. And hopefully maybe again in the future, I know you got a long list of people you still don't have on the first time, but if there's a round 2, I'm still, who knows what I'll be doing, but if it's a couple of years down the road, I'd love to come back.
Absolutely.
And keep up the good work on this podcast and everything that's there.
Yeah. Thank you to our amazing production team. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Grace, our amazing, incredible production team, and Gideon, our editor. Thanks for all those listening. Stay tuned. We have some great guests coming up. And signing off, Rabbi Kappenstein, host of the podcast and director of the Columbus Community Call. Thank you for tuning in, and stay tuned to the next one.
To listen to all KOLOT episodes and see upcoming guests, visit kolotpodcast.com. We are also on all podcast players. Type in KOLOT on iTunes, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, Podbean, and Amazon. Share with your friends, and please make sure to give us a 5-star review. KOLOT is a project of the Columbus Community Kollel, a full-time Jewish learning center in Bexley, staffed with high-caliber Torah scholars. Ever since 1995, boys, girls, men, and women from all backgrounds and affiliations have found many opportunities to connect with Torah and mitzvos at the Kollel. Whether it's a study partner, an engaging lesson, or a program, the Kollel is your one-stop shop for all your Jewish learning. If you want to know how you can benefit from the Kollel, visit thekollel.org. That is TheKollel.org, and forever be inspired.